Hi, I'm Martin. Welcome to my presentation on my exemplary data science project called Daily Stock Price Prediction. Enjoy. So what is the agenda of today's presentation? I will start with a short overview on my personal background. Then there are two major parts. The first one is a stakeholder presentation and the second one, the data science peer presentation. Finally, I will conclude with a short outlook. Very briefly, I want to introduce myself. My name is Martin Poschmann, I'm 28 years old and I'm living in the wonderful city Cologne. I have a professional background in the energy sector and I'm holding a PhD in energy economics. So what's the basic motivation for me doing this course? First, I want to dive deeper into data science. Second, more important, I want to gain additional knowledge in Apache Spark and cloud computing. So let's start with the first part of this presentation, what targets a rather high-level presentation for stakeholders. And what we're trying to do is trying to convince them to provide budgets so that we can take our prototype and transfer it into a productive solution, which actually allows to leverage revenue potentials. So what is the use case about? So it's called daily stock price prediction, and that is what it's all about. So the primary purpose is to predict tomorrow's stock price data and stock price development for selected firms. So we only take a subset of firms, and we're trying to use publicly available stock market data to do so. So what is this data? This data is, as already mentioned, daily stock market data, and it's provided by Quandl, which provides a Python API to access this data. And these price data includes opening prices, closing prices, as well as quantities traded. And these, for example, can be used to derive average price data. Now, the range of the data is from 2011 until today, and of course, it's a daily temporal resolution. And we use these prices in order to predict the daily price development. What is the ratio of the closing price compared to the opening price? So what we're trying to do is we're sitting in the evening doing our predictions and we're figuring out whether it makes sense to buy stocks tomorrow in the market when it opens and sell them again when it closes. And the basic rationale behind this is that prices are expected to increase tomorrow, and this will actually happen if our predictive accuracy is high. So now I'm trying to illustrate the basic use case using an exemplary graph. So first of all, I've already mentioned we are only selecting a few firms. So the idea is that we need some domain knowledge. We don't want to have a predictive model what is just a black box, but when having our predictions, we want to apply our domain knowledge. We know these firms and we can somehow estimate whether our predictions are plausible. So what we see here in the graph is for Adidas, for example, the daily stock price time series for a few weeks. And we're actually focusing on the ratio of the opening prices marked in blue and the closing prices in green. What you can see here is that dependent on the day, either the opening price may be higher than the closing price or the other way around. So in most cases and on most of the days, they are quite close towards each other. But what we mark here with the red arrow is one case where the closing price is really higher and significantly higher than the respective opening price. And this is what we are focusing on what we are trying to predict. So to sum up, the primary goal is to leverage revenue potentials. So we want to get money for our stakeholders based on the intraday price spread for specific firms. So what we're doing in the end is, so we predict whether the closing price tomorrow will exceed the respective opening price by more than 2%. And this is called, or this can be interpreted as significant revenue potential. And this actually happens in 6% of all cases, so it's a rather rare event. But however, we're trying to figure out whether there's any way to predict these events based on machine learning and especially deep machine learning. So what comes next is some information on the basic approach applied. So what we're essentially doing is we compare rather traditional predictive modeling approaches on the one hand and deep machine learning models, artificial intelligence on the other hand. We split our basic data set into training and testing data, and in the end we test our model randomly on 15% of all of the data. And for the testing data, this one is not used to train our model in order to guarantee that we get meaningful estimates for the out-of-sample predictive accuracy. We then evaluate our basic model performances based on confusion matrices. And these also yield the true rate of positive predictions. So what is it? So if our model predicts there will be a closing price tomorrow which exceeds the respective opening price by more than 2%, then we want to find out what's the probability of this prediction being true. And on a rather general level, the matrix you see below, what is called confusion matrix, shows 4 numbers. So on the upper left, we show when we predict that there will not be a significant price increase tomorrow. Will this actually be the case? So is this prediction correct? And just below, on the lower left, we see, okay, we predict the price increase will be below 2%, but it's actually above 2%. And on the right-hand side, we see the same for predictions that we get a price increase above 2%. So on the upper right, it's a false prediction, and on the lower right, we predict there's a significant price increase and it actually happens. So with it, this is what's our positive and true rate of positive predictions. So if we predict we have a price increase and it's actually there. This is probably the most relevant slide for our stakeholders. It presents results and we give a short outlook. So the confusion matrix here shows our best model, what is a random forest classification. And I just want to focus on the true positive rate. What is 620 divided by the sum of 126 and 620 here. So this is 83%. So whenever we predict tomorrow will be a price increase above 2%, in 83% of all cases, this is true. And this is somehow amazing. So in 83% of all cases, we believe in our predictions, we actually make money. On the other hand, what we already see here is that only in a few cases of all predictions, these yield a positive estimate. So we have a rather unbalanced ratio of positive and false predictions. Yet, the most relevant part is that even in rare events, we get a significant amount of money, and this is what is provided here. So we have promising results, which allow for leveraging revenue potentials. What's our data product? So the data product as of now is a provision of the predictive model code via an API. So you can directly execute your daily predictions close to real time, and you can decide on whether you want to invest tomorrow. However, this model and this data science project is somehow only a kind of prototype. It's meant to convince you to invest further budget and provide budget so we can spend more time on the model, increase predictive accuracy, try out other models and so on. So what we expect based on these promising results and the indication got here is that providing further budget will allow for further insights, increased predictive accuracy and further applications. So right now we are focused on a somehow short-term prediction, daily prices. But what may also be interesting is a rather long-term perspective, such as predicting weekly price developments or monthly price developments. Now comes the second part, which is meant for our data science peers to provide some focus on additional technical details in order to revise this project in the way how it's implemented. And I will keep it rather short. First of all, some insights on my architectural decisions. So what we're essentially doing is we daily stream publicly available stock market data from Quandl, which provides a respective API. And we then predict the stock price development of the next day. So it's somehow all implemented in the main program code. And this is due to the amount of data being somehow limited and restricted. So we focus on a subset of firms and we can directly handle all of our data within the main program code. So what we do to sum up is we directly load all data provided by Quandl in the main program code, and execute our predictions. We do not use Apache Spark as of now, since the data and the model complexity are somehow limited. Nonetheless, we get promising results and our models work well. Yet, what I will show in the Outlook as well is there are some ideas on further more sophisticated and more complex models we would need to think about using Apache Spark in cloud computing. What we're doing then is we are having pre-trained models which are saved, and they can also be uploaded to the cloud. So we provide a template for this, and the idea is that not every day you need to retrain your model, of course. In the end, the data product is the access via an API, and I provide the respective links so that you are able to have some insights on my code and implementation. What is relevant when it comes to data and feature engineering? So regarding feature engineering, I derive some additional features. So of course, Quandl is only providing the price and some quantity measures. It's a daily price time series in the end, but we want to get some further explanatory power, and therefore we derive some features based on domain knowledge, so to say. So what we do is we calculate some volatility measures, how volatile are my prices and trade quantities, and we derive historical average price levels. So what's the price development over weeks and months and so on, and this may help to predict tomorrow's prices more accurately. Regarding data engineering, so what we identify is that we have a significant amount of opening price data, what's lacking. But that's not an issue. So what we see and what we would expect is that closing prices of yesterday and today's opening prices are quite similar. So there's essentially no difference. So what we do is we impute closing prices which are missing with the closing prices of the previous day. What we then see is that especially in January 2019, that turnover data is missing. This is used to calculate and derive average price levels. And therefore, we have mean imputation applied here for these features with a rather monthly temporal resolution. And as it's monthly, the volatility over time is rather low, so we do not expect significant information loss. What we then do is we have an unbalanced data set, so the positive case of having significant price increases is rather rare, so we upsample our data to get balanced data. So in the end, we have a classification task. And when it comes to dimensionality reduction, we apply principal component analysis, and we test it around a bit what may be a suitable number of PCAs considered here. Just one graph on our data. So this is a correlation matrix, and what we see here is when we focus on the row and columns referring to y, the target variable, is that we identify rather low correlation. So we already get an indication that it may be hard to find really highly informative features and variables. And this already suggests that maybe some neural nets may be really helpful and some nonlinear models, since linear correlation is not identified here. I've already shown what I would suggest being the best model, the random forest classifier. What I focus on here is the true positive rate as our accuracy measure. However, of course, there are other measures such as the score, the classification accuracy, and so on. So why do we use the true positive rate? So in the end, that's the best indication or approximator for whether we are getting money. So if we get a true prediction, so we have a significant price increase and we invest money, what's the probability of getting some return? So having price increase above 2%. What also comes to our mind is that the rate overall of having a true prediction is comparatively low in the case of random forest. So if you compare this with a neural network, in more cases here we get a positive prediction, so approximately in 3000, what is close to 50%. However, the true positive rate here is only approximately 66%, so significantly lower than in the case of random forest. And this is why in the end we say random forest here is our best model. What we also did is comparing other models. So for the case of the neural network, we applied it without having PCA for dimensionality reduction. However, the results are not that promising and the accuracy is lower and the true positive rate is lower than in the other case. So we suggest to apply PCA here. Then we compare some rather traditional approach for this logistic regression. What we see here is that it's clearly outperformed by the machine learning models. So we leave it just as it is and don't use it. So what's the final outlook? So there are some ideas to further improve the current model. So of course we're focusing on the true positive rate. So what we could do is we could apply a weight rating for our target figure. So we could put a higher weight for actually these true positive predictions, what in the end may improve our return. Second, we could spend time investigating the performance of rather sophisticated and more complex models, such as LSTM time series prediction, and then we could use grid search, of course, for the hyperparameter tuning, and therefore we may use Apache Spark and cloud computing. Now, in the end, what I've already told you is we're only having a prototype somehow. So what we recommend for the future is extend, of course, the analysis presented here, consider more firms and so on, and test it in more deep. And of course, add further predictive target figures, such as the monthly price development. So broaden the scope of our analysis and predictive focus. Thank you very much for listening and reviewing. I'm looking forward to your comments and discussions.